Happy Thursday, everyone. I'm coming at you from church. I had to come out here to do some work anyways, so I thought you might like to see your home. It misses you. Tonight, we start the Easter Triduum with the Mass of the Last Supper. So the Easter Triduum is a liturgical celebration that kind of exists between Lent and Easter. It's one big celebration over 3 days. So when we have Mass this evening, we don't end Mass. If you remember, what usually happens is the altar is stripped and the Eucharist is moved to the altar of repose. It's taken out of the church, so Mass doesn't officially end. And then we have Good Friday service, which is not a Mass. And the Easter Triduum actually ends on Holy Saturday night with the Easter Vigil. So we're entering into this most sacred time in our church, this Easter Triduum. And today we're going to talk a little bit about the Eucharist. My friend Maggie is going to give this talk, and I'm so excited for you because she's going to talk a little bit about liturgical music, about a song that we would typically hear on Holy Thursday when the Blessed Sacrament is moved to the altar of repose. The reason I really wanted to talk about the Eucharist in this is because it is so central to our faith. As Catholics, the belief in the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus Christ present in the Eucharist, in the Blessed Sacrament, at every Mass. He is still present even though we are not able to be present right now. We have been talking a lot, and we'll continue to talk about the sacrifice that Jesus made for us when he offered himself on the cross. But also in the Eucharist, Jesus offers us himself. And when we receive that Eucharist, it has the ability to remove our venial sins as it fills us with grace. So right now I know it is hard for a lot of us to not be able to receive the Eucharist. But what we're having to do is we're having to make a spiritual communion. And so my hope for all of you guys is that during this time where you're making spiritual communions, and you're not able to make a physical communion, that the desire in your heart is growing. The desire in your heart is truly growing for the time when you will be able to physically be in communion with Jesus in the Blessed Sacrament in the Eucharist again. Just so you know, with a prayer of spiritual communion, I will add one at the end of this video. But with a prayer of spiritual communion, you don't have to wait until you watch a Mass online to pray it. It doesn't have to be prayed with the watching of a Mass for it to be valid. So you can have spiritual communion, make an earnest prayer, pray that prayer of spiritual communion, desire that for your heart, and receive him in that way. So to talk to you a little bit about Padre Lingua and a little bit about Holy Thursday, I am going to throw it to Maggie now. Bye-bye.
Hey, my name is Maggie Jirak, and it is 1:25 p.m. I'm still in my pajamas because that is what this quarantine is all about. Just kidding, it's not. It's about Holy Week because that's what's happening now. It's Holy Week, and I'm going to talk to you guys about Holy Thursday. And that's coming up this week because this week is Holy Week. Holy Thursday is the Mass of the Last Supper. Tons of things happen, namely, it's the institution of the Eucharist, the institution of the priesthood, and about 7 other things that I'm not going to talk about, but you should look them up on your own. Normally when you go to Mass, there's a procession at the end, and they put the Eucharist at the altar of repose. That's the official name of it, that I just learned that today. But it's supposed to symbolize Jesus going up. He's leaving the Last Supper. He's going up to the Mount of Olives, where he's going to pray and will be betrayed by Judas, and then that takes us into Good Friday. And one of the things traditionally that we would sing during that time in Mass is a hymn by St. Thomas Aquinas, written in 1225 for you history nerds. You guys probably have heard Down in Adoration Falling, Tantum Ergo, right? Well, fun fact, there's 4 whole stanzas that come before that part, and the whole song is called Pange Lingua. I always want to say linguina, but that's too much of a pasta. So I'm actually going to have you listen to it right here, and then we'll chat about it very briefly. So there we go.
Sanguinis
things that stuck out to me were he, the Paschal victim eating, first fulfills the law's command. I like that because it shows that Christ, he fulfills the Old Testament and makes a new manna in that instance, right? We don't have to do Passover anymore because he fulfills it. And then it says, then as food to his apostles, gives himself with his own hand. So Christ is not only a gift from God to us, but Christ is a gift from himself to us, that we can receive him in the Eucharist, spiritually or physically. And he also chooses to give himself up, which we see in the Passion. He chooses to lay down his life for us. So Christ is a total gift. When Christ breaks bread and he's holding the bread and he says, this is my body, he's holding himself. He's giving himself physically and literally, which is kind of mind-blowing. Gives himself to us, to his apostles, right? The next phrase goes, Word made flesh, the bread of nature, by his word to flesh he turns. I think that is poetically gorgeous. Just the way that Thomas writes it, that the word made flesh, by his word turned bread into flesh. By his word to flesh he turns. That's the way Thomas says it, but that is beautiful, I think. So that could be something that's prayed a lot with. Thomas Aquinas hymns, they're like the hymn version of eating an entire cheesecake by yourself. Like it's pretty much so rich that you can't even hope to finish it all in one setting. And then he finishes it with, only be the heart in earnest, faith her lessons quickly learn. Meaning that only a loving and earnest heart can perceive Christ through faith, which is what we hope to be like in the Eucharist. We hope to have that loving and earnest heart. When we desire to have that communion with Jesus, we desire to perceive him and to have him be in our souls, because that's how we get that zest, is by having the desire, right? It's not always, you can't always say it's the same as a feeling, but I think it's a choice and it's a desire to be close to Jesus in any way that we can be. And right now, that's going to be spiritual communion. I think this is a time in our lives when God is asking us to make this our own, to make our faith our own, to look at our lives and to decide, is this my own? Do I want to do this? Is this a desire that I actually have? And if so, do it. This is like a time to be creative, right? I'm not going to tell you have to live stream Mass, you have to live stream Adoration. You can, if you want to live stream Mass. I probably will. But it's a good time for you to be creative. God gave us imaginations. Glorify God in a way that does in fact glorify him, but also puts you in a remembrance of him and what Jesus has done for us through the cross. Light some candles, say some prayers, try and prepare your heart for Easter as best you can. Do something creative that glorifies God. That's my challenge, and that's what I got for you. If you really want a challenge, you can look up St. Matthew's Passion by Bach. I'll warn you, it's very long. Praying for you guys, pray for Cassie, and pray for your priests as well. Pange lingua.